Welcome to your Optimal Personal Economy podcast with Justin Bennett. Your personal economy is your ability to create, protect, preserve, and utilize your wealth, your financial world. Justin will share strategies and stories to help you optimize your personal economy. Now, on to the show with Justin Bennett and co-host Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to another podcast with Justin Bennett. People want a leader. When you look at leadership, leadership changes. There are a lot of books written on leadership, but the way that Justin is going to explain leadership today, I feel is a little bit different and puts you in a better place as the follower of that leader. So Justin, when you think about leadership, what does being a leader mean today?
I think in general, Matt, people truly want to be led in all domains of life. But as it relates to money and planning, I think people appreciate and like to be led in a way in which they self-discover as the journey's unfolding, as opposed to being told that, hey, this is what you have to do, and if you don't do it, there are consequences. I don't think that that's well received by many people out there. It's certainly not a way in which I find myself receiving things well.
Well, especially successful people, right, Justin? I mean, successful people love the opportunity to discover more about themselves and making informed decisions, right?
Absolutely. And I think, successful people recognize that there are areas in which they are very, very knowledgeable. And then there are going to be areas in which they're not very knowledgeable. In fact, they don't know what they don't know. And when they can align themselves with a leader that demonstrates a way in which they can work together and produce certain outcomes over a short-term period, whether it be a year, give or take, or a long-term period, call it north of 10 years, and those outcomes are consistent with and in line with what their expectations are, then that person becomes a pretty effective leader along the way, because what they're doing is they're allowing the consumer to self-discover. And when you self-discover, I think the ownership of the decisions become that much more powerful.
How did you learn how to do this?
I'm actively learning, Matt. I'm actively learning.
You're an avid consumer of information. Is there anybody that you look to or any books that you've read that you're like, you know what, this isn't exactly how I do it, but this was a good way to inform me and help me become a better leader?
No, there's not. Nothing that specifically comes to mind, but I would humbly submit that, in doing this podcast and putting other content out there in the various ways in which I put content out there, I'd like to take some responsibility that I am the author of creating this content that we're today calling, leader and leadership and how to be led type of information. So at some point, when I'm not speaking and in the driver's seat live and in person with my clients and the people that I serve, they can refer back to this memorialized information that they can have at their fingertips at whatever time of the day they may want.
Let's talk about that in-person thing, because you do a magnificent job of coming out with content on a regular basis that is truly showing thought leadership within, your purview of excellence. How does that translate to in-person? People who are sitting down in front of you, they feel it too. Would you mind sharing that a little bit with us?
Sure. When I say in person, it's not just, eyeball to eyeball across the table. It's also over the phone, through FaceTime, through WebExes, through active communication on email and the like. So I think we've used this word or this expression in person, and it's traditionally referring to somebody sitting hip to hip. I think it's important for us and me to demonstrate qualities in which our clients and the people that we serve can feel as though they're sitting hip to hip, even if we're 1,700 miles apart. And that's something that's really, really important to us, so that we can create scale. We could better serve the people that we work with and the people that they care about even if they don't happen to live in the Northeast and they live in the Midwest, or they live across, the country over on the West Coast or wherever that may be, we want to be able to create this feel that we can create this leadership, this way to be led, regardless of the circumstances, and we could be connected to the people.
I might be way off here, so correct me if I'm wrong. Do people who have the same level of expertise and knowledge that you do when it comes to financial services in other disciplines, do you find it that they are actively seeking leaders like you because they realize that they know what they know, but they don't know what they don't know?
Well, I think what we've discovered over the years is that the most successful people are leaders in a certain craft. And whether that be, in the world of medicine, or whether that be in the world of manufacturing, or whether that be in the world of tax planning, whatever it may be, they're leaders within their certain craft. And so they recognize that within a personal planning economy, they may not be leaders. And so therefore they want to align themselves with people that can exhibit that type of relationship and that type of knowledge and that type of care and empathy. And so, people can really appreciate the fact that, hey, listen, I know that somebody is looking at my planning, both how I've made decisions up to this point and really getting to understand that, but then also making sure that along the way we have a track to run on, so that as we continue to make financial decisions, those decisions are done in a very coordinated way, so that when we get to some future point in time and it's no longer a person at work and it's money at work, the ability to convert the assets into income is going to be done in a seamless way to which somebody doesn't have to compromise lifestyle.
Closing thoughts. I mean, I feel like I haven't asked you all of the questions that I should, but I love the answers that you've given. So what should I have asked you? And if we did cover the gambit today, what are your closing thoughts?
As we opened up this idea that people want to be led, and I intentionally use the word want as opposed to need, because I think the vast majority of the people that we hang with, so to speak, live a life that's based on wants and not based on needs. And I think when people can start to recognize and understand that how they live their life in various domains is a very wants-based approach and not a needs-based approach, they start to realize and recognize that aligning themselves with a planning firm like us will give them the ability to recognize that they want to be led, and they want to be led in a way in which they are learning, becoming educated, and quite frankly, they are being empowered to make decisions as opposed to being told on how to make the decisions and what decisions to be made. Because I think that, approach of parent to child, right, where, that in and of itself, we can probably spend some time on at some point in a future podcast. But I think this whole idea of, mom and or dad saying to child, hey, do this, do that, is a lot different than saying to child, hey, I want you to make the decisions that you want to make and recognize that there were going to be consequences with those decisions. And so, as you continue to move through life, and although when the kids are young and the decisions may be small and therefore the consequences may be small, if they could start to understand and recognize that the consequences from the decisions are really what drives the decisions and the behavior, we as parents can start to maybe recognize that it's much bigger than telling our kids what to do and hoping that they do it, because that's when they give the most pushback. So as it relates to planning and money, we would never want to take an approach that would tell somebody what to do, because we feel like they're going to give the most pushback, and therefore they're going to end up in the least favorable outcome, because we're walking around pounding our chest saying, hey, do this, do that, you need this, you need that, when in reality, they don't need anything. And so What they want, though, is they want to be led. They want to know that somebody's with them. They want to know that somebody understands them, and they want to know that somebody understands, the track to which they could run on that will create the most favorable outcome. Because what we always say, Matt, is the person that wins the game is the one who could spend the most amount of income on the least amount of capital. And that's I think an expression that is very, very under-discussed and misunderstood, right? So if you can be in a position when you could spend the most amount of income on the least amount of capital, then it doesn't have to be every morning that you wake up and you swing for the fences.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be that very, very exhausting type approach, which I think traditional planning creates. And we work hard to create empathy to traditional planning and align ourselves with people that are looking to think differently and therefore create different results. So those would be my closing thoughts for you, Matt.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, thank you so much for your thought leadership today.
Thanks, Matt.
And if you have not subscribed to the podcast, click that subscribe now button below. And if you know somebody who really is looking for leadership, please make sure that you share this podcast with them. And it's as easy as just clicking that share now button below. So for everybody at Bennett Financial Group, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.